trip. Scott Linden here for a bonus edition of the Upland Nation podcast. We're going to be talking about my favorite subject. Yours too, I bet. Bird hunting and a little bit of motivation, inspiration, hacks and hints, no matter where you want to go this season. Yeah, I'm going to talk about kind of going a little deeper into the backcountry on this road trip edition of the bonus episodes of Upland Nation podcast. These are the things I've learned over the years that have helped me hunt public land birds all over the country, primarily the West and the Midwest. But the lessons I've learned and the inspiration I hope to bring to you is valid no matter where you're going. In fact, I was looking at some notes about the Deep South, for example. But anyway, we'll get to all of that in just a minute or two. And so even if you're not planning to go where I've been, I hope you'll learn something and take it to heart for the motivation, if nothing else. This special bonus edition of the Upland Nation podcast is brought to you in part by all of these great sponsors who make these extra editions available to you. Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food, ESPAmerica.com and their digital hearing protection devices, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, and my shotgun guru, Dave Fiedler. Shop him first. TrulockChokes Tubes, MidwayUSA.com, LandTrust.com, Pointer Shotguns, and HiViz Shooting Systems. And of course, as always, if you're looking for more ideas about where to go and what to do when you get there, visit the website, findbirdhuntingspots.com. Well, as they say, you pick them up and you put them down. It sounds funny, but it is the key to backroad birds. Often, boot leather is the secret, not tire rubber, although you'll be using enough of that to get there. Yeah, you'll need a relatively sturdy rig for going after birds in the deep, deep wild. That might be the magic carpet that takes you for the ride, but only to the end of the road. Once you put it in park, then you'll be walking into the decent hunting. Sometimes a long walk, other times just a few thousand yards. So if you're not already, start getting in shape. That's going to be the secret to finding those wild birds in wild country. There's a lot more to it than that, of course, and that's my goal today, to give you some of the details in which the devil is. Okay, I don't want to hear from the English majors. I know. Here in the West in particular, but the Midwest is almost as good in many states, and then depending on where you are, there may or may not be tons of gravel and dirt roads, rural highways, or those cattle trails that some people are willing to drive. The trick is narrowing it down to the ones that are worth the effort. Whoa, thanks for that musical cue, by the way. A bad choice could mean hours of trudging, stumbling around for no birds, or worse yet, no birds, a disappointed dog, flat tire, or a very real risk of someone eventually finding your bleached bones at the bottom of a canyon. So narrowing the focus to someplace where the odds are in your favor is the first step. We'll cover that very soon. We'll identify some access, terrain, cover, and other factors that'll boost your chance of success and hopefully put you into a great wild bird hunt. So let's start finding them. Birds in the back of beyond. Step one is easy. Narrow down your options. Take the species you're looking for and look for states that are well known for that species. It could be wild chuckers in Nevada, big sky sharptails in Montana, or it could be as simple as you got family obligations, but you have a hall pass for one day in between in-law visits. Start your online and your personal digging to steer yourself in the general direction, and then we can get down to brass tacks. Whether it's Montana Huns or New Mexico Gamble's quail, success will depend in large part on starting in the right place from that general jumping off point. If you don't by now know how to do your e-scouting online through one of those apps, well, learn now. It'll be worth the trouble, and it'll probably save you miles and miles of headaches. Do your homework, understand what the favorable habitat for the birds you're chasing will be. Bunchgrass and cheatgrass, high hills with volcanic eruptions on them, for chukars, for example. For pheasants, it's those gullies and draws next to grain crops. Whatever it is, start learning what that looks like on satellite photographs, and then do all that online research. Yeah, there's so much out there, and a lot of it you'll have to take with a grain of salt, but still, there's all sorts of useful information if you just sift through all the baloney that's out there as well. Watch out for the blind alleys in social media, subterfuge from less than generous keyboard warriors, but once in a while, if you read between the lines, or you just get lucky, a nugget might shine through. Don't forget your friends and fellow dog and conservation club members. They'll help too, sometimes, and that is worth the effort as well. You might even find a hunting partner out of that. Another one, depending on your preference, a time-honored way to narrow it down is to hedge your bets depending on, the time allotted, your physical condition, even your mood when you turn on the truck. Draw, the right size circle around your starting point, and you'll probably find a couple good choices, maybe some not so good choices, but at least you'll have narrowed your focus. And I don't know about you, but I still love those old school paper maps. Yeah, they're still all over my house, and in fact, I just posted a new map of a spot I'm going to for the first time this season. It's up on the wall in the office, and whenever I'm drinking a coffee, I'll go look at it. And not looking for anything in particular most of the time, just learning the lay of the land and instilling in my own subconscious a deeper grasp of the area, looking for some of the more subtle indicators in the landscape, whether it's property lines or landmarks, it doesn't matter. You learn stuff just by looking at it. On almost every hunt I've ever been on, a little detail that was buried deep in my subconscious will help me go around that really bad spot or find a deep, crevasse or valley somewhere that I hadn't remembered before then. And there might be birds there. You're listening to the Upland Nation podcast. This is a bonus episode all about, taking a road trip to the back of beyond. I'm Scott Linden, your host, and glad you're joining me for this. And hopefully out of it, you'll pick up one or two things and hopefully share them with a friend. I remember years ago, I interviewed Jim Zumbo. You might recognize the name. Jim was the hunting editor at Outdoor Life magazine for a long, long time. We worked together when I did podcasts for them. Anyway, Jim said, the best elk is 100 yards from the road. And that guy knows his stuff. You look up elk hunting in the dictionary, that'll be his picture next to the big bull. Anyway, Jim has a couple basic theories. The first one is everybody else is going way out there. They're ignoring the close-in good habitat, and that might be a good place to start. Yeah, I understand, but we're not going to a Navy SEAL Hell Week test. We're there for the dog work and the birds. Beautiful country. And all of that could be a few hundred yards from the truck. Not always, and we'll get to that in a minute as well. But one way to start, especially if you have limited time or energy, is close in. looking for birds that everybody else didn't even bother with. They really wanted that tire shredding drive, or blisters on both feet, skin knees, and burning lungs. But if you chose your location well, you're already close to the middle of nowhere, so going a little bit or a long way farther to the exact middle of nowhere may not pay off all that much more. Yeah, so think about the close-in birds, especially if the habitat looks good. Most people might be walking past that first 2, 3, 4 coveys of complacent, content, unbothered birds. Now, I feel funny hunting one of those kind of spots because a state highway runs right down the other side of the valley I'm on. And it's a narrow valley. There's a small creek in the middle of it, but the highway is raised up just enough. The roadbed is, 15 feet above the valley floor. So everybody can watch me and my dog. But I still hunt it once a year. It's kind of a tradition. And one of the reasons I do is because everybody else drives right past. It's at the edge of a, fairly good big game hunting area and an okay chukar and quail hunting area. But that first edge is the one everybody goes past. And I got to confess, when somebody drives by and they look like they're in a hunting rig, I kind of hide. Bring the dog in and crouch behind a bush or two, or duck down into that creek bottom. I don't need more people discovering it too. But anyway, most of those drivers aren't hunters, and they probably think I'm crazy walking along this tiny ribbon of water in a narrow and frankly really ugly canyon. Not very well managed. Don't get me started on why. But I've shot valley quail, chukars, and even mountain quail right along that stream because nobody else bothers. They're ignored by almost everyone else with a shotgun in their pickup truck. Keep that in mind as one reason to stop your trip a mile or two short. Unleash the dog, go hunting right there. You might be surprised at the lack of the tire tracks, and that's the point. Maybe I'll tell you another story about chukar hunting in a minute, but once a lot of hunters pass a city limit sign, they just keep going as far as they can go, not even looking at the good terrain that they're racing past. So, the birds, remember, can't read a map. And all things being equal, there's as good a chance they found a good haven right there and wonder what all the commotion is on the highway next to it. Yeah, I'm going to tell you this other story. I hunt, Nevada a lot, and there's a town, if you want to call it that, where all the chukar hunters go a certain time of year. All, maybe 50. But we were there, and we go there about every third year. And first thing in the morning, it's kind of like a Grand Prix auto race. That running start. The drivers are on one side, the cars are on the other. Run across the track, get in, start up the car, and then head for who knows where. Well, we were in on that, of course, on opening morning or whatever that morning was. And everybody just kept driving. At one end, way at the far end, 50, 60 miles away is, a place named after the bird we were chasing. But blew a tire. So I'm along the side of the road, changing the tire as everybody else races past. Okay, all right, a few of them slowed down, and some of them stopped and checked to see if I needed any help. So thank you guys. But most of them were hell-bent for that place way at the far end. While we're sitting there working with the tire and everything else that goes along with that, Dave is looking across the road at a draw that's, a mile and a half north of town that nobody turned down. And it's got all the same hallmarks of every other great-looking spot in that country, except tire tracks. So once we get the tire replaced, we just detour over to that side of the road and follow that 2-track. We were only, a couple miles from town at the most by the time we gave up. I mean, the road got really bad, and I only had one spare left. So we parked, got out, turned the dogs loose, and found a spring right around the corner, tucked underneath that one rise and up that draw. The spring hadn't been used in years by cattle. That's what it was developed for. There was an old trough and everything, even a little bit of a corral left. But now it was just a pool, one of those limpid pools in the desert. They even look thirst quenching, especially to a bird. We hunted around that oasis because it really was. I mean, it had tall grass. It had a couple little scraggly trees. Everything was green and lush right around there. We hunted around that oasis, half mile in any direction, and found 3 chukar coveys that I don't think had seen humans in their entire life because everybody else kept going. Now, that lesson has served me well over many, many seasons since. In fact, my buddy Tom, who you've heard about before, has a strategy for those. He uses one of those icons on the Onyx map app called Sasquatch, and he marks those spots so that someday he'll get back to them. I did write a story about that. Anyway, think about those close-in spots that everybody else ignores. I got a lot more to come on the faraway spots and much more in the way of hints and hacks, tips and tactics coming up after a word from landtrust.com. Get outdoors without the crowds. Yeah, if you're really looking for an exclusive, quiet, solo experience, get private land access at landtrust.com. Then you don't need to listen to this podcast. No, you still would, because we all love to hunt public land. But if you're looking for private land access so you and your dog can focus on what's important, and because you're going so far away, you want to be assured that you're going to have someplace to go to yourself. Learn more at landtrust.com. Costs nothing to open an account and shop around. landtrust.com. And outfit your wild bird, wild country expedition at midwayusa.com. They got just about everything for hunting, shooting, and the outdoors. Sign up for their emails or texts and you'll get 10% off your next order. They've always got something going on, a promotion, a sale, a special, a contest. And now over a dozen of my exclusive dog training videos. So if you're looking to kind of fine-tune some of your dog training, there's some tips and ideas there that might help, whether it's steadiness, retrieving. I touch on the stuff that the other books don't cover. So check it all out and go shopping at midwayusa.com. Welcome back to the Upland Nation. This bonus episode all about road trips. Road trips in the broadest sense. Maybe to you it's in your mind, but we're all trying to find new, great wild bird hunting spots, especially public access spots. And I'm Scott Linden here to help you a little bit. Maybe you'll pick up 1 or 2 things that might help you. I hope they do, and hope you'll share this podcast as well. Talked about close-in birds, and hunting the birds that nobody else bothers with, and they're always, their eyes are middle distance staring at that place over the ridge. But the opposite is also true. A good friend reminds me time and time again, every season, he says, all we got to do is one more mile. And if you listen to a recent podcast, I think Jake Bartels mentioned that yet again. If you're hunting hard, what's another mile, first off? And most people won't bother. They won't go to the trouble. So go a little bit up that draw, maybe to the top, go further down that valley or over that next ridge, because that's more likely where the untouched birds are scratching away on the ground, unfazed by other bird hunters. So if earning your birds, unquote, is part of the ethic, drive far and fast, lay in plenty of water, pick them up and put them down. Just make sure you've done your homework. These days, you should almost always be able to figure out what the habitat is like on the other side of that hill. I learned once again last season, this strategy can pay off in spades. I mentioned 2 tracks a lot. Sometimes they're barely 2 tracks. And sometimes those tracks are full of really ugly rocks. But we slammed the brakes on at the end of a kind of a really bad desert dirt road. Sat tight for a couple minutes because all the dust in that cloud behind us caught up and passed us. Cut the 2 dogs loose and started walking. We didn't find a covey until mile 7. And the biggest news was it was flatland. And it was chuckers. We found the last covey at mile 14. Yeah. It was incredible. Incredible. Big circle. So it was, we weren't 14 miles away when we turned around. That would have been a bit much. But the dogs did put in 31 miles that day. But nothing until the 7th mile. Timing? Maybe. Better habitat? Yeah, it was about all the same to us. We might have been closer to water once or twice. We didn't know it. We couldn't find anything. But those birds are not going to be that far from water, so we just got lucky in that. But luck is a matter of persistence. Walk a little bit more, find more birds. What we didn't find was just as good. No other hunters, no empty shells, no footprints, not even a dust cloud in the distance. As we were coming out, we drove past another spot once we got to the state highway, and sure enough, in the spot you could access with your Prius, there were 3 different parties of hunters. They didn't have the nerve, or maybe they just aren't as crazy as some of us. We had the legs that day, so did our dogs, and they didn't. Wow. Worked for me. I'll cherish that day the rest of my life, Ben. Thank you for the lesson yet again. So I've talked about both ends, the close-in stuff and the far-away stuff. Well, remember in college, you get graded on a curve, that bell curve, where there's very little at one end and very little at the other. Well, all the hunters are in the middle. So it's getting hammered. So one more time, just ignore the middle if you can. I even do that when I'm fishing. I'll be in a stream with, over the course of a day, I'll run into 5 or 6 other fishermen. I'll go all the other places. Look for that back pocket habitat that most people won't bother with because it's too small or too far or too scary. And it happens. I'm thinking of a spot, kind of close by, where I did run into somebody in one of those spots. Turned out to be a friend from one of the dog clubs I'm in. So we had a great day the rest of the day after that. We kind of ran against a few bits of barbed wire gate here and there and really bad roads. And at the end of that day, well, that drive, I should say, and it ended up being the end of the day, we found 2 rigs tucked into a little hollow that we didn't think anybody knew about. And you couldn't see them until you got right on top of them. Dang. And I thought we were going to have that spot all to ourselves. Beautiful spot. Crystal clear stream coming down from the top. Lush canopy that, almost like out of the Lord of the Rings, kind of covering that stream. But they were there first. So we put it in 4-wheel drive, busted our way through the canopy on a road, through the canopy and through the stream, got to the other side, went comfortably far away from their rigs, and sussed out that they were going up that draw where the stream came from. So we went down and across. And we'd hear a shot every once in a while, but they were way up there and we were way down there. So it worked out okay for both of us. Towards the end, they got a little closer. We got a little closer. Pretty much called it a day by lunch because it was pretty hot already. And in fact, it sounded like a little dip in that stream for the dog and my sore feet would be a good idea. So I left Dave at the truck testing out the beer supply, and Flick and I limped over towards that creek bottom. And there they were, all of them doing the same thing. They were soaking their feet, letting their dogs play in the water, and everybody had a bottle in their hand. So you talk a little bit, and somebody says, "Hey, aren't you that guy?" And yeah, aren't you? Anyway, talk. Open the cooler, take the boots off. Everybody's having a good time. You never know who you're going to meet when you get out to the back of Beyond, and most of the time, either you or they are going to have an extra bottle somewhere in the cooler for a visitor. That worked out pretty well. We had a good time. Shot some quail there too, by the way. So you think about all this stuff, and I just alluded to it, and I really do want to motivate you more than anything else. That what matters most may be a full bag of birds for you, but what is important as you're searching for these places is looking for the critical attributes that a bird or a covey or a bunch of birds will need. First, a water source, especially early in the season, especially in the West. And as we've learned recently, even pheasants like water somewhere within their bailiwick. So when you're doing your homework, make sure you have a big red circle around the blue lines and the blue blotches on your maps. Obviously, you're going to look for terrain that's favorable to your chosen species. I know it sounds obvious, yeah, but think about it and then look critically at the topography. I'm not going to lecture you on the differences. You know what they are. Just make sure that when you get down to, picking their spots, that they have a good amount of that kind of habitat. Do the research. Master that new Onyx mapping 3D feature. Put yourself on the ground, at least digitally, and look closely. Then once you get close enough to look with your own eyes, take a look at, the more subtle differences. In the West, for example, in Chukar country, there's a vast difference between what they call Medusa head rye and cheatgrass. One is a delicacy, the other one is a scourge. Same for some of the grain crops, for example, if you're looking for huns. If you're looking for sharptails, it's as subtle as the height, the height of the grass. Learn that stuff, bring binocs, and look through them before you get too close. You might save yourself a flat tire. Yeah, don't ask. Now, I alluded to it in my fishing, and it's true in my hunting as well, especially public land hunting in places that maybe you read about in a magazine, and so did everybody else. I like the butt ugly spots that nobody else thinks are worth the effort. I know. I own a German wire hair, so I'm already down that road. But if a place has 2 or 3 of the best attributes, but lacks the one every book and video says is crucial, I might put it into 4-wheel drive and start right there anyhow. There's a lot of reasons for you to do the same. Birds might just be muttering in the brush there because the ideal habitat on the next ridge is already taken, or they were pushed there by hunters or a predator, or they could be passing through on the way to something better, but they're there because there's nothing better nearby. And there aren't as many humans bothering them because they're going to that spot that everybody else is going to. I'll give you one example of that. It's been a bad fire year. You know that. I don't care where you live, but we've had it really bad here in the West. A couple of years ago, a really big wildfire blackened one of my favorite desert creek bottoms. And so last year, it just looked like, the surface of the moon, but darker. When the desert burns, the soil is black with burnt sagebrush and bunchgrass. It's black. But if you're back at the road before you start going up that draw, you can just see a little bit of green somewhere up there in the riparian area because the stream is still coming down from the very top. So if there's green, there's hope. There's where that 1 more mile lesson comes in handy again. We kind of puffed our way through the ash that we put up with every step for a couple miles up that draw till we got to where the stream was running again, because it's kind of, it goes in and out. It goes down, it goes underground and then comes back out. It's really cool. We got to that green and, about a dozen or 2 yards on each side of the creek. There's still willows, still grass, all the things that will grow really fast or did not get burnt in the fire. Sometimes that's how it works, that mosaic effect. Can't hear Flick anymore. Look at the GPS and he's down at the bottom, 15-foot, pretty steep creek bank. He's been hunting the bottom the whole time. Can't hear him. He's down in there. I just stand still. Maybe you know this feeling if you've hunted this kind of terrain before. The first thing you hear is pit, 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 pit. And then as their wings start hitting the limbs and the leaves of the little willows, and then boom, here comes the first covey of valley quail. Half-headed downstream, half-headed upstream. I hit one of the downstream birds. It dropped in the taller willows just below us. Flick brought it back. When I cleaned the crop, you know what they were eating? Toasted cheatgrass seeds. Yeah, whatever had been burnt the season before was still on the ground, and that's what they were eating. Kept walking, found chukars in the same kind of situation further up the hill. So look at the ugly stuff. If it's got some of the attributes, it might be worth a few miles of walking. And besides, what else you got to do? Mow the lawn? Yeah, I've mentioned the term back road a couple times. It really implies a lot. Besides being far from civilization, just remember things like there probably is never going to be a search and rescue call out for you. You might not have a mobile phone signal. You may not be able to fill up your gas tank. And The nearest hospital may be 100 miles away. So be safe. And remember that the best that could happen in some of those spots is that they get crossed off your list of future hunts. But once in a blue moon, the rose blooms among the thorns. How you find those rare blossoms is really the key. Boy, I hope to see you out there sometime. If you do see me, don't hesitate to say hello. I'll be the guy looking for my dog. He'll be over the next hill. Until then, I'm Scott Linden. Thanks for listening to this bonus edition road trip episode of the Upland Nation podcast.